listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Hello, once again. My name is Dr. Mark Fulton, and you are listening to FrameworkFocus, the first and only podcast brought to you by the first and only long-term care software platform dedicated exclusively to the unique needs and workflows of long-term care pharmacy. With me today is a very special guest, someone who I am thrilled to be talking to, Mr. Tim Fensky. Tim is the Associate Director for Advanced Wellness Pharmacy in Massachusetts, and also a personal friend and a great storyteller. And I'm really excited to get into it with Tim today and gather his perspective on all things LTC. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Tim, I was really excited when you accepted the invitation to look at being on the show and taking part of this. This is now I want to say our 13th episode. We've been doing this over a year now, which is really quite exciting. But so Tim, tell me a little bit about your background. I ask everybody this. So why pharmacy? How did you get involved in this profession? What made you choose this career path? And what kind of led you to where you're at today?
Oh boy, so it's funny because there's me and my brother, and when you're growing up, your father is always saying what he wants to have in the family, right? So I was always supposed to be a doctor, and my brother was supposed to be a lawyer. That's what he wanted. My father was a general contractor, and he didn't want us to have to work too hard. So I said, okay. So I really enjoyed chemistry in high school, and I originally started out to be a pediatrician, and then really got into the chemistry. And I said, well, I'm going to go off to school and I went to Boston to the Northeastern University, and I went. I declared being a pharmacist right off the bat. I enjoyed it, right? Unfortunately, my brother went the other direction. He went into the construction business with my father. So he got one out of two wasn't too bad. So I got up to Northeastern, and I started my career. And believe it or not, I didn't do any like work in a pharmacy or anything until my co-ops and in my clinical rotations. I actually was a bouncer bartender to pay for my room and board instead of working in a pharmacy. And actually, when I got to my third year, we went to, as most pharmacists did, they would do a trip to Eli Lilly, right? So that kind of got me thinking maybe when I was going through school, there wasn't a lot. There was your community pharmacy, there was hospital, there was some pharma and like in the sales rep. And I was like, this is really intriguing to me. I don't want to be just a bench pharmacist. So I decided that I wanted to detail medication. So going through school, I get out of school in back then there was no API rotations, right? There was none of these 6-8 week rotations. It was 3 months in hospital, 3 months in an ambulatory setting. So I did my ambulatory setting. And the ambulatory setting was an independent pharmacy, Sullivan's Pharmacy in Boston. And then I did 3 months there, and it was nice. They had a nice little niche. They had their retail pharmacy and a niche of this kind of like early stages of long-term care, right? They had congregated care settings. They had a rest home. They had a contract with a local substance use and mental health hospital where they would drive the meds 2 miles away to this hospital and supply them. And I thought it was kind of neat. And but I still focused on wanting to be a sales rep. Well, towards my time when I was getting ready to graduate, I basically the owner comes to me. He goes, "Someone's leaving. Would you mind, staffing for a while?" And I said, "Well, I'll give you like 6 months because I really want to go off and detail medication. Retail is not what I think I wanted to do." Well, that led into a 30 plus year career at Sullivan's. I actually took those congregate care and kind of grew over time the business to out of this little corner of the retail into a 4,000 square foot area in the building where we were doing everything from compounding to long-term care to hospice care to now all this med sync with the multi-dose packaging. And I did that up until about September of last year when I decided that I thought I was going to try to retire. And that didn't go too well with my wife. We played golf for about 2 weeks, and she was like, "You know what? You're going to kill me with this golf. I think what we need to do is get you a part-time job." So I actually called a friend of mine to see if he would give me some staffing on the weekend, and that turned into this position that I'm in now, rebuilding another company into a larger company. So it's been an interesting career path. I mean, I've done everything but pharma, to tell you the truth. I've done hospital, I've done long-term care, I've done retail, just about. I mean, I even had a management company where I was managing some pharmacists and doing staffing for local hospitals and everything. So I think I've done everything but what I started about my career to be.
One of the things I really like about what you said there, Tim, was how, you've done so many different things, and these are not variations of the same thing. These are jobs that are very disparate, require different skill sets to be successful at. And I think that's what makes pharmacy really unique, is that you can move horizontally. You can go and work from, in a retail to a hospital to an LTC setting. And even though there's a common thread of dispensing medication, the ins and outs of those jobs look incredibly different.
Mhm.
I think that's part of what makes it hard for us to see a lot of unity across the aisle within the profession. Um, you know, One of the things that I really like about that story too is just being willing to take that chance, especially, not in the first 10 years of your career, at a point where a lot of people, maybe, you say, hey, here I am, I'm ready to, look at retirement and take things easy and not make a lot of change. And before you know it, you're just back in a new challenge.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest challenge that you found right now with, kind of, rebranding and turning around a struggling pharmacy? And I don't know if struggling is the right word, but maybe a
No,
benefit from some
yeah.
leadership.
Well, I guess the thing is that it wasn't. Well, I guess every independent community pharmacy is struggling due to the atmosphere that we're dealing with today, right? But again, I think it's an opportunity to still work with patients, make sure that they're taken care of. There are other avenues. You have to be able to pivot in this business. You have to be able to find what you're good at and actually do it, right? So like with everything that I was telling you, I tell people all the time, you hear the phrase, jack of all trades, master of nothing. I tell people I'm a jack of all trades, and that's what I've mastered, right? So I'm able to go out and try to build on something that's given to me. So my job right now is to basically take projects to fruition, right? Take it all the way, work with the staff and my colleagues, and make sure that we succeed. That's my job right now. So it's what I've been doing for my career, and I enjoy it. And I look forward to this challenge. And I don't think it's a challenge because I have some really good people around me, and if I can groom them and they can elevate me and I can elevate them, it's a win-win all around. So there's really no hurdles. It's whether or not I put the hurdles in front of me.
Mm-hmm. You bring up a good point. I love that perspective on leadership. It's something that I think we don't get taught in school. And, if we have good mentors, we have the right coaches in front of us, then we can pick that up and we can learn it. And when you see that and you're able to apply it and you get those results out of it, it's really affirming and just such a great feeling, to see the growth in others and to help bring that out. One of the things that I know you've been really heavily involved at that hands-on level, taking care of patients, the day in, day out business of the pharmacy. But, as someone who's always embracing new opportunities, I know that you spent a lot of your career involved in various organizations and being involved in, pharmacy-based orgs, kind of across the board. Tell us a little bit about that, about your involvement, kind of how you got started, and some of the things you've gained or learned from your experience?
Well, again, it comes from mentorship, right? So I started at a community pharmacy. The owner was heavily involved in what back then was called BARD, the Boston Association of Retail Druggists, which is now the Massachusetts Independent Pharmacists Association. Um, my age right now is the age that he was when I was tagging along, right? So now there are younger people that are tagging along on my coattails, right? To learn how to start off in an association. So that's where I got it. I got it originally from an independent organization, independently run organization, and that kind of just kept branching out over and over among other organizations. You start at that level, and then went up to the state association, was put on their board. Got to know more people than just independent owners and operators. You get to talk to people who are in hospital and chain, and you get to bounce ideas off of each other. And that was that's a professional organization, right? So during that time, you start getting involved with other people, you start talking to other people, and something seems like it'd be a good idea. Um, you know, I just kept progressing and asking questions of people like, what else I could do, right? Eventually, we had our Massachusetts tragedy with a pharmacy who actually dispensed some sterile compounds and harmed a bunch of people back in 2012, right? So there was an opportunity for me to actually move over to the Board of Pharmacy here in Massachusetts. So due to a bad situation, I took it upon myself because I was doing sterile compounding at the time in my company, and I said, you know what, maybe I can get involved in another way and help regulate this. So I applied and I got onto the state board, which I became they changed the regulations, and the seat that I started off in was the sterile compounder seat. So coming from Massachusetts, that was an interesting seat to be in right off the bat. And again, that just everything just, when you meet people and you ask, and just collaborating with them, people ask you, have you ever thought about this? And you just keep going. I getting on the board, I basically I started going to the district meetings because you become a member of the National Associated Boards of Pharmacy when you're on the board, and that leads to going to district meetings. So I went to the District 1 and 2 meeting, and I sought out the District 1 rep at the time, and I said, this is fantastic. I love all the different how everybody talks differently about what they do in their own state. I think this is great. I'd like to get more involved. When's your term up? And he goes, well, it's up this year. I said, that's great. He goes, maybe I'll apply. He goes, listen, nobody knows you. He's giving me some background. He goes, nobody knows you yet. So do your time, get to know people, and then get your name out there. Don't you? I'd say probably about 3 weeks later, he calls me and he goes, unfortunately, the person who needed to run has to step back, and there's an opening for you to try to run for the district seat. So again, a lot of it is collaborating and getting support from your colleagues, and then there's a lot of luck sometimes in my case. So it's and then it just keeps going from there. I mean, it's asking questions, it's attending events, it's collaborating, and you get to know people. I didn't get to do all these associations without having colleagues have the trust and the backing to do this. Do you know what I mean? And without them and even my employers, right, to say, yes, go ahead, do this. We support you. I mean, you have to have a lot of support to do this too. I mean, it's not for everybody, but I just enjoy collaborating with people because you know what? They may have an idea that I've never thought. Listen, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm never going to be the smartest person in the room. But if I can get one or two pearls of wisdom from somebody that may spark an interest to me to do something in my business, that's even more important to me.
I really love the way that you describe that. And I like the humility that you brought into it because you also gave credit to some very interesting ideas that it's a combination, right? I was in a very similar boat. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I also was working in sterile compounding in
Hmm.
2012 when that incident occurred. And I remember the impact it had on my business and that it had on me. And I didn't go join the state board. I actually went and thought, okay, I'm going to become an expert in clinical nutrition and get board certified. I need to make sure that I know everything about this in and out. And so uh, it's neat how those events kind of affect us and can cause us to, really take action on something instead of just thinking about it.
You
Um,
know what also happened, Mark, with
what,
that tragedy? And I never thought I would do this either. So I get on the state board, and there's a lovely woman there who's working at Northeastern, and she comes up to me, and she's a board member, and she goes, you know what? You're going to do sterile CEs for me. So I started teaching sterile CEs for Northeastern University, and I did probably 8 or 9 a year on different aspects of sterile pharmacy. I know, I how to build a clean room and how to garb and gown, and actually developed a hazardous sterile class for Northeastern years back. So again, it's just the support that you get. I mean, the support I got from this woman was fantastic. She was like, "No, you can do this." And I was like, "No, I can't. I'm not a teacher." She goes, "No, you're going to be fine." And I did it for probably about 4 years after the situation. So again, going out of my comfort zone, but yet it was a really fun time to do that and everything. Too bad it came out of a bad situation though.
no, I hear what you're saying. You touched on something that's really key there. That that feeling of deliberately getting uncomfortable, that's really a hallmark of maturity, and someone who I think is a good leader and is a good, role model or mentor will encourage you to do those things, because I know that the folks in my career, my life who have done that for me have been so impactful, and because at the end of the day, the truth that's underneath that is the people around you, they want you to do well. They know what you're capable of, and they want to give you those right stretch goals, and challenges so that you can make, meaningful gains. And I think, being part of those organizations, that's something it's so important, and it's hard to understand, I think, when we're young in our careers. As we get older and we see the way things, the machinations and how they operate, it becomes way more evident, uh, the level of influence and the importance of having really good committed people, who are taking part in these organizations and participating. And so some of the things that you've done, tell me some more stories about your involvement with different organizations and some of the things that you've helped to like learn or develop.
Oh boy. So I told you earlier that we were working with a hospital that was substance use and mental health, and that was always something that I was always interested in actually detailing those medications. Right. I mean, when I was in school, Clozaril was brand when I started off in school. Right. So now everything's generic, but and I really over time developed the want to help individuals with substance use disorder and having friends that have it. And nowadays, if you don't know somebody with it, you're the minority right now. Do you know what I mean? With everything that's happening. So again, I got involved with NABP, and when I got to what I'm really proud about is when I got to be president, the initiative that I was able to try to get boards of pharmacy to understand that pharmacists should be able to extend therapy for substance use disorder, for medications for opioid use disorder, try to get them to change their regulations and allow pharmacists to do more and more. And we're seeing that now. The scope is broadening. I had the opportunity to work with Congressman Tonka's office on the MAD Act through NABP. So when you get to a certain point in involvement, you're able to maybe I don't want to say be selfish, but like do something for that means something for you. Do you know what I mean on a platform? And if you can do that, then it gives you a really good sense of achievement and everything. And that's something that I've always tried to do. when you're on a board, though, you have to remember that it's not about you. It's about the vision and the mission of that organization as well, right? But if it's something that you can fit your own personal spin on it, then then that's what we should, you can do. So I believe that we did a lot with the substance use disorder when I was president of NABP, and I'm seeing it now. I'm seeing people in Idaho be able to get DEA licenses and actually extend therapy, and it's evolving, but it takes time. It takes time. You can't do everything in 1 year.
It's a cultural shift, right?
Right.
I'm 100% with you. The way we look at substance use disorder and medication-assisted therapies in long-term care, this is a place where we're seeing a lot of growth. I've heard from a lot of our customers, in long-term care pharmacies out there, Medicare has been expanding behavioral health. There are more and more of these facilities popping up that have inpatient populations. They need medications, the benefits of medication in getting someone off of, opioids like fentanyl and heroin, and helping them to, at least get enough drug-free time so they can recover. Those medications are invaluable. And recently, like you said, we've seen a lot of scope increase, Idaho, Nevada, allowing pharmacists to initiate and monitor and manage those therapies, which is a great place for us to be. And I think just like, during the pandemic, I think pharmacists can play a huge role in helping to resolve the opioid epidemic, when empowered with those types of tools.
Yeah. I mean, again, you need to always remember that, when you're on a board, you need to make sure that you're backing the vision, right? But at the same time, there are ways of working with all your colleagues to really, really come together and work on something. It may not work in all states. Every state is different, right? I'm just talking from the regulatory aspect of this stuff, but it is starting, if one state does it and then another state, and then certain states are like, I'm falling behind now, I want to do this. And it's nice to see, do you know what I mean? So, that was just one thing that I'm very proud of, that I had the opportunity to do with being president of NABP. So,
well, that's awesome, Tim. I'm sorry to take us down the rabbit hole there, but I think that the longer term and broadened impact, the work that you did there with NABP, it has really set the stage and got the ball rolling for things that are escalating now, at state government levels across the country. The other thing you touched on there that I want to tease out is the importance of alignment, right? You talked about how it's not really about yourself. It's about the organization and achieving their mission and vision, making sure that your goals and what's important to you is aligned with the organization that you're working for. I think that's something that makes a job or position, whatever it is, the most fulfilling. If you're really aligned with what this company actually wants to do and the difference they want to make in the world, if that's something I want to be a part of, then we've got a good alignment, and this is probably a good relationship. There's lots of examples where that doesn't work out well. What we're going to do right now is take a quick commercial break. We'll hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more conversation with Tim Fensky of Advanced Wellness Pharmacy.
Hey, I just want to say thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. We are dedicated to bringing a myriad and diverse amount of content to you 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. And it is all driven by pharmacists, educating pharmacists, pharmacy technicians sharing, pharmacy professionals helping to build the better and future pharmacy care model. Tune in, go subscribe on all platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, Pharmacy Podcast Network. Thank you for all that you do.
And we're back. Thank you very much for staying with us. We are here on Framework Focus, talking with Tim Fensky, Associate Director for Advanced Wellness Pharmacy, and an organizational maverick. One of the cool things that Tim has done in his career is he has held leadership in other positions in a variety of pharmacy-based organizations. Tell us a little bit more about that leadership journey. Um, you're kind of like a superhero in this area, just seeing a job that needs done and signing up. But uh, tell me really, what was that journey like for you? How did you start out? And then how did you kind of level up and choose which organizations to be part of? And, what did you learn from that?
So if I had to put one job description on my CV, it would probably be fireman, because I can't tell you how many hoses I've drank from. You have to realize that if you don't know everything until you get into it. Okay. I can tell you, my first meeting on the executive committee for NABP, it was drinking from a fire hose. It was like there was so many acronyms, and there was so many things going on, and you're trying to merge in and listen and try to figure out what's going on. And that's where you really need to step back and look at those individuals who've been there for a while and pull them aside and say, can you give me some background on this? Do you know what I mean? Where can I read some background so I can get up to speed on those things? And that's something that, well, for lack of a better term, I'm an information junkie. I like to read. I like to learn about anything and everything, right? So what happens is, right now my new venture is working with NCPDP, because I was able to meet them when I was president. We got together to see how we could actually NABP and NCPDP could work together, right? And there's some commonality there, but I will tell you, I'm really excited to have been put on their board of trustees. I'm actually going to be co-chairing one of their work groups as well, so that's going to be interesting in trying to get caught up on everything there. I've got a lot of stuff to read before May, but again, this is an organization that I think that's going to tie everything that I've wanted to learn together. If you think about it, they basically bring together producers, providers, payers, special interest groups like EHR vendors, just a whole bunch of people in pharmacy, and how to better have an interoperability of data across every platform, right? And so for me to bring in regulatory, because talking about CMS guidelines and just like how that data flows, and be part of the solution to how it all flows, and see what's coming down the pipeline. Because again, you don't know what you don't know until you get involved and you actually collaborate with all these people. So I'm really excited about this new venture. Believe me, I loved the regulatory side. If I could have figured that out probably 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have gone that route. I would have gone down the regulatory side. I love that side of pharmacy. But this new venture with NCPDP, I had gotten the opportunity through NCPA and in NCPDP to attend work groups for the past year, and I decided that I was going to get more involved with it, because they're always saying that they need more providers' input. Right? You go there, and there's not a lot of like people who are actually using the data, right, and how it flows. They're not there. It's the medical records, it's the payers. There's not enough pharmacists there to say, well, that doesn't work in everyday practice. Do you know what I mean? So for me, that's the reason why I got more involved with NCP, because I kept hearing that, right? And if I could say anything to everybody right now, I would love to see more providers at NCPDP to basically work with everybody else, right? There's like these three different badges that they have. And, we need more people to basically speak up and say, well, I don't understand why you're doing that. Think about this. When you were in pharmacy school, was there a course on how electronic claims get sent, or the data that flows from one EHR to another EHR? There's nothing like that, right? Go into this meeting and I see e-care plans now coming out, the standardization of medical records, things that I've been talking about for years. It's here. Right. This is where you basically can get involved with that, but there has to be more of those pharmacists. So I'm excited to do that. And again, I'm trying to. I love learning everything about pharmacy, and if I can If I can just be a part of it, that's great. If I can help lead, that's great too. But again, it is like drinking from a fire hose. I do a lot of listening the first probably 2 or 3 meetings, and then slowly merge onto that highway of unless I really feel strong about a point, then I'll actually give my opinion. But other than that, I actually will merge in as well as anybody else.
Well, that's the opinion of, I think experience and some seasoned wisdom. So I'll appreciate that. I've been involved with NCPDP myself for the last 5 years, and it's a terrific organization. I can say as a provider, as a pharmacist who also being part of NCPDP, it gives you a very unique perspective because you can immediately envision, oh, this is what that application would be like in real life. This is how it could save me time or money or improve my day. It'd help us take care of patients, I think, in a safer, more
That's right.
manner. That's what's really about.
Yeah.
When we have better data and we're sharing better data, across platforms, then we're taking better care of patients and we're removing opportunities for error. One of the things I like about NCPDP is it's very democratized. We all represent, different, sometimes competing interests, but really people put that aside and there is on this neutral playing field. And it's all about, like you said before, the mission and vision of the organization. It's about how do we work and further that. So, that kind of brings me to my next point that I wanted to get your thoughts on. As a pharmacist, one of the things that I did a lot in school was they encouraged us to be involved in various organizations. And it was easier to when you're in college, you don't have like other obligations, but life happens fast. And, if I'm out there in my career and my world has gotten a little smaller, it may be easy to say, I just don't need to spend that $100 on dues this year, or am I really getting out of this organization what I'm putting in for my money? And so why is pharmacy involvement in professional organizations, be they regulatory or standards organizations, why is being involved in an organization like that important? What does that matter?
Well, when we got an election coming up at the end of this year, right? Okay. So when people want to complain about things or they don't like the way things are going, if you don't vote for anybody, you really don't have the right to complain, right? It's the same thing. If you don't get involved with your organizations or ask questions or ask what they're doing, become part of an organization. I mean, right now there's so many organizations out there from state associations to professional organizations like ASCAP or ASHP or APHA. I mean, there's some national ones, but there's also local chapters as well that you can get part of. So if you don't want to do the national stuff, I understand that. But at least on a local level where you're practicing, get involved and find out what's going on. I mean, my biggest thing is when you look at the legislation that comes down, it's because some constituent told a legislator that this happened to them and they come up with an idea, but they don't know that that's not how pharmacy practices, right? Perfect example is, I remember this one from Massachusetts and it gets me to this day. There was a rider put onto a bill that basically says pharmacies have to sell lock boxes for medication, right? And they had to be within a certain amount of feet from the pharmacy counter and everything. It was just it's minor, okay? It's like putting up all these signs that are in the statutes and everything. If you don't watch this stuff and talk to people, it's just going to come down on you. You're going to have to do it anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, if you're not involved, you can't stop some of this stuff that people don't know how pharmacy practice works. So by getting involved, you're talking to people and maybe it's like, yeah, maybe it's not a good idea. Yeah, lock boxes, you can go to Staples and pick up a lock box if they really want to lock up their medications. Does it have to really be in the pharmacy? Do you know, in the I think that law's been out for about 15 years now. In the 15 years that I was working at the community pharmacy, do you know how many lock boxes we sold? 0. Okay. So again, it's protecting your profession And when you don't get involved, you can't really complain about it unless you want to get involved in something. I applaud the students for going down and doing white coat ceremonies down on the state house. I appreciate all the fly-ins. I've done fly-ins to DC with different organizations to talk to legislators. Legislators only know what they know, what's told to them by individuals who actually practice, right? Otherwise, they gather information from the wrong people. Okay, so by getting involved in those things, you're benefiting the profession. You're benefiting yourself in the long run. If you see something that's coming down the road that may not be what we want to happen, it's again, you have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem, right?
Hmm. Well, and when pharmacists do work together, we've seen where pharmacists can be part of the solution. Recently there was an effort that happened the last few months in Ohio, where there was a bill coming down that was going to essentially, it was one of those bills that came out of the pandemic era, and they said, look, as Congress, we want to force a pharmacy to fill a prescription and not allow them to deny it for a therapeutic reason. This all happened with the hydroxychloroquine, and
Right.
pharmacy wouldn't fill it. And so someone got mad. They called their legislator and they said, okay, we'll pass a law that says the pharmacy has to. We won't hold you liable, but you can't just refuse to fill it because it's not therapeutically appropriate. Well, the state board launched this huge, it wasn't the state board, I'm sorry, the State Pharmacy Association launched a huge grassroots effort. They made a bunch of phone calls, and they actually made an impact. They were able to get that bill stopped in its tracks and killed on the floor of the Senate, and essentially protecting the profession. So we've seen where it can work in when it's done right.
Right.
But as far as, okay, how do I get organized? If no one participates and no one listens and no one picks up the phone, then your
Right.
organization's not gonna continue to exist.
Right.
Yeah. So when we look at pharmacy practice, we look at how these organizations impact the way that we do our jobs and what pharmacy looks like in this country. Where do you see the biggest impact? If for pharmacists who do get involved with these organizations, where's the biggest opportunity to make an impact on the way that our profession is practiced?
Well, I guess right now, I think the biggest thing for me is that when you look at the medical field right now, we have a lot of opposition from physicians in our pharmacy scope, what they like to call creep. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? My thing is that, and I understand that I don't want any pharmacists to be diagnosing. I do want them to be able to assess the situation and use point of care testing. Okay. Where we're losing more and more primary care physicians, and the private practices are being bought up by hospitals, and, there's not a lot of access. Okay. Especially in rural areas, right? Now, I got to applaud some of our rural areas like North Dakota, Iowa. Those areas, they're actually doing some really neat scope of practice things and allow pharmacists to. Even Washington State is doing some stuff, right? I would love to see pharmacists be able to be an access point and work collaboratively with doctors, whether it's under a collaborative practice agreement or state protocol or whatever the case may be. And be able to actually really do more with patients. We see the patients more times in a year than a physician does. I mean, I probably see one. I know in my company right now, we talk to each patient at least once a month. We do wellness checks to make sure they're doing okay. Do they need any other their PRNs or because we have them on the MedSync program and everything. So, but we talk to them once a month, right? I would love to be able to tell them that oh, I'm not feeling well. Well, why don't I come out and we can assess you. Do you know what I mean? Getting back to doing house visits, doctor house visits, but working with primary care or their doctors to say, listen, this is what we found out. What would you like to do? Again, in certain states, you can actually write for just basic intoxicating spectrum until they can get to the doctor on the weekend. Again, I try to take it to a higher level with controlled substances. Someone comes in, it's a Friday afternoon, and you don't want somebody going seeking a dose of heroin because they couldn't get their Suboxone on Friday. Be able to access, do a cow on them, and and basically extend their therapy for 3 days, and then call their clinician and say, listen, could you get back to this patient up by Monday? They're going to need more. Those types of things that we should be able to do. And I think that's where I'd like to see people get more involved and actually have more of a voice, because I think that'll go longer. I mean, the states are out there and their practice that pharmacists are healthcare providers. But what does that mean if we can't do anything with it, right? So that's the next step.
Mhm. Well, absolutely. We just saw that recently in Pennsylvania, March 1st. They made pharmacist providers here in Pennsylvania. And again, with that, at least at the state Medicaid level, okay, here's a list of CPT codes and list of things you can bill for.
Mhm.
And a lot of it's like you said, it's the test to treat. It's, point of care testing. I think that's going to be huge, especially in long-term care when we think about people being cared for at home, like what you were talking about. So were you referring to home care patients when you're talking about, checking on those folks once a month? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, so basically the CMS is calling it, I guess, more like medical at home, whereas the pharmacy is calling it more LTC at home. You've got a great organization out of Philadelphia. She's opened her name is Lindsay Dembowski Constantino, and she basically has an organization called LTC at Home, which is actually growing. It's basically letting people age gracefully at home by working with them with their medications and actually doing referrals. We actually do some of this now when we do our wellness check, or if we have a driver that comes back and says, I peeked inside the house when I was delivering that medication, and doesn't look like it looks like there's a mess in there or something. So we can actually call elder services and say, listen, can you do a wellness check on this person? They send somebody out and they find that they need Meals on Wheels, or they need their yard cleaned up because nobody's been able to help them. Stuff like that. Stuff outside of pharmacy that we can actually refer to as well. And there are some people that are getting paid for that as well. So that's a bonus on top of it. But again, it's not just looking at the patient just medication wise, but holistically, what else do you need? What nutrition do you need? What do you need wellness checks? Do you need somebody to take you shopping or bathe or whatever the case may be for your ADLs? But also helping that way as well, and involving other organizations.
Tim, I really love what you just talked about there, because what you hit on is the defining principle of pharmacy that, earlier you said, look, you just don't get it until you're into it. You don't understand what something's going to be like until you're actually in there and you're doing it. And when you're in that role of a pharmacist and you're caring for people, that's what we do, I think, in this profession. And you're right, it doesn't always revolve around drugs. Oftentimes it does, but pharmacy is so much more. And it's so broad that it's quite possible you can look at, people in different roles and scratch your head and say, is this pharmacy? Yes, it is. It's a very broad category, and it encompasses so much. But the story you just told there, it really is a testament to the way that pharmacists look at their jobs, the way we look at our sacred role to care for patients, especially long-term care, where we're caring for patients who are quite possibly the most vulnerable in our society. And as we do this, and as we look to advance the missions of these organizations, we have a lot of new technologies that are coming out, a lot of new innovations. There are new things that are happening right now that are hopefully going to help us do this job better, do it more efficiently. When we think about technology, Tim, what are your perspectives on where are we going to find the most significant impact to our profession? What technologies do you see coming out or emerging that are going to have the biggest impact now and in the future?
I guess right now the biggest thing out there is all the med management systems that are out there, and being able to interface that technology with our pharmacy information systems to be able to pull information in from other pharmacy information systems, whether we do that with AI or if we do it with having APIs talk to each other. I mean, there's so much we could be doing in order to keep everybody up to date on what's going on. Perfect example is someone goes into the hospital, they get discharged, right? I would love to know it. I would love to know that as soon as they get discharged, they have me in their record as their provider. I automatically get a patient profile from the hospital. That moves along to me doing a med rec with the provider, right? This can all probably be AI generated at some point, because that's the new trend out there. I know that we're looking at how AI is going to be looked at on the regulatory side. Who's going to regulate, what you can do and what you can't do with AI, as far as HIPAA is concerned, and that type of stuff. There are a lot of as people age, and people like my age who are used to smartphones may be able to utilize that technology more. There's a lot of remote monitoring that's being done right now. I have friends that a lot of their business is doing remote blood pressure monitoring, glucose monitoring. Okay, there are a lot of those types of products out there that people pharmacies are doing and doing well, and actually getting reimbursed for. So there's a lot of technology out there that we can advance our patients' health with. It's whether or not they're going to adapt to utilizing it. There are going to be those individuals that are possibly older that will not be able to adapt to it, but people our age that are going to be aging, and we're going to be using it until the day we die. You know what I mean? So, I mean, who doesn't have their cell phone in their hand 90% of the day?
I often think about what that will be like, not to diverge too much, but when people our age are in the nursing home, what would that look like? Are they going to put on Oldies? Let's put on.
I would argue the opposite. I'd argue the opposite, that we're not going to be in nursing homes, that we're going to be in our homes and aging in home, because everything's going to be either on some type of tablet or it's going to be on some type of AI platform. I hate to say it, it's almost like the Jetsons, just face to face like we're doing right now on this podcast, and just talking to a provider. We're not going anywhere, right? Things are going to be delivered to us. Okay, we're not going to go out and get them unless we really want to. So I think that's what we're going to be, Mark. We're going to be sitting at home having everything sent to us.
I sure hope so. I hope no matter what I'm doing when I'm older, I hope that I'm happy and surrounded by people I love. But I tell you what, because the thing I love most right now is doing this podcast. Well, okay, maybe second most, but this is such a great experience because I get to talk to thought leaders across the industry, and people like you, Tim. And it's great for my listeners. One of the things, we get thousands of downloads in these podcasts every month, and we're so grateful for the people that pick up and start listening to our content. One of the things people listening to this show might be saying is, hey, I was involved in my state pharmacy organization when I was in school or right after I graduated, but then I just deprioritized it. It wasn't a priority for me over the years. Maybe I want to get back involved. Okay, where do I even start? All right, what are my Monday morning steps? If I want to start getting more involved in organizations, where do I even begin? Right? I don't have a lot of time, right? I have a busy life, but where do I start?
All right, so let's look at your career, look at your interests. Okay, if you're someone who is, I don't know, a consultant pharmacist, you're going to be part of ASCAP. You're going to go to a local meeting. You're going to join that local chapter. You're going to go and you're going to talk to people. And then you're going to find out about another organization that you could possibly look into if ASCAP isn't right for you, right? It's the same thing that I do. I attend a meeting. I may go to, if they're putting on an annual meeting or their spring conference, right? You go there, you interact with individuals, you talk to people, you talk to the speakers. you get ideas of where you can actually find information. I mean, if I had to say anything, the more you attend, the more you're going to get out of things, because you're going to attend, you're going to ask questions, and then you can take action on it, right? So about it that way, 3 A's: you're going to attend, ask, and then take action. That's how you get involved, and that's how you start. But you have to put yourself out there. You can't just sit there and not do your own research. You have to figure out what's important to you in your career, and then basically figure out how you want to proceed with that. Again, mine came out of a bad tragedy back in 2012, but I was already involved with the local organizations for the independent community pharmacies. So, but again, I also had a mentor that kind of dragged me there kicking and screaming. And then once you get involved, it becomes easier and easier over time.
The impact of mentors really can't be understated. It's so impactful. It's so, I think about myself and the older pharmacists that I learned from when I was coming up and, 20 years ago, and the things that they taught me, and how maybe they didn't think of themselves as mentors at the time, but that's really what it was, right? How can I find a mentor? Do you have any advice for our listeners on, let's say I would like to be a mentor, or I would like to find someone to provide me some mentorship? What are some strategies you could use to go about that? What advice would you give?
Again, I've always started within my own, wherever I'm working, right? I find somebody that basically is, it's talking to people and collaborating. So, I mean, again, I was lucky that it was an owner that basically took me and to the meetings, and then I just went from there, and I just talked to everybody, right? But to find a mentor, you could call an organization that you're interested in and say, I'd like to talk to somebody more about this. Do you know what I mean? That's actually a member. Reach out to the organization. Do you know what I mean? And just say, listen, I'd like to talk to somebody. Maybe it's going to be somebody on their executive board. You don't know. And you could actually hit it off with that person, and you go to their meeting, and the next thing you know, you're getting involved. Again, attending conferences, I can't stress it enough how important it is to actually collaborate and talk to people doing different things. You get ideas. I mean, you learn from people. I mean, like I said, I'm still learning from people. I'm in my 50s. I'm still learning from people. Okay, I can't stop learning from people, because I know there's people out there younger than me that have better ideas than I have, right? And then I challenge them, and I basically say, listen, how do you think we're going to do that? Tell me how we're going to do that. And they've got some really great ideas. Yeah. And I've learned from them too. So it's not just older people, it's younger people too that are coming up. There's some impressive young people out there these days. And what they're doing, you can't stop progression, right? It's fantastic what these guys are doing with the technology that's out there too. So again, you got to teach this dog old tricks.
Yeah. No, I hear you, Tim, because I work in a technology company, and a lot of the folks I work with are younger than me, and they're just downright brilliant. I'm just so impressed by, what these younger people can do, and the way in which they do it. I think millennials get a bad rap for their work ethic gets tend to be labeled as a certain way. I find that not to be true in practice. And I find even the younger kids have such a tremendous work ethic. The folks who are in their mid-20s, some of the most amazing people to work with, I can imagine. But it's great. There's such an importance to mentorship, and I think, like you said, both in being a mentor, or looking for someone to mentor you, making sure that that's out there. And I think it ties back to another point you made about you have to put yourself out there. For a lot of folks, especially in the sciences, many of us tend to be introverts. If you're not comfortable talking to people, pharmacy is probably not a good. You get us in a room and we all talk together, and pharmacists can talk together for hours and hours and hours. And
okay, you want to learn how to put yourself out there? You want to learn how to put yourself out there? Do what I did. Become a bouncer. Become a bartender. Somewhere where you have to talk to people, okay?
Well, I tell you what, if you've ever worked retail pharmacy and just do comparison chart between being a retail pharmacist and being a bartender, and there are so many similarities. It's basically the same job. You know, you got this control thing, and you got to prepare and dispense, you know, and you got to do it quick. And people complain about the price, and you know, brand, yada yada. Okay.
I like your comparison. That's nice. I like that.
Oh man, Tim, this has been a joy. Thank you so much for spending some of your time with us and with our listeners. I just want to wrap up here. I want to thank Todd Urey and the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I want to thank Tim Fensky for being our guest today. I want to thank you out there listening to us, supporting us on the podcast. We appreciate you. I want to see you next time on Framework Focus. My name is Dr. Mark Fulton. Have a great day.